No, we're good.
Hi. Okay, push start.
Go for it.
Hello, hello. All right, this one is called An Excellent Source of Knowledge. This is a iTunes review from one of you loyal listeners, so thank you. He says, I have been in actual recovery from sex addiction for about 3 months and found this podcast just a few weeks ago. I've been able to identify with your stories, and it has allowed me to realize many of my own pitfalls. Although we are still estranged, I am hopeful that she can become the woman of God that she always wanted to be despite my actions. I am becoming the man I always imagined, and I can see a path of redemption individually and in our relationship. This podcast is a significant part of that hope, so thank you so much.
That's awesome.
Keep going, bro.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Working hard.
It's rad.
Okay, so what if I told you guys that a lot of what you know about love is just
Jacked?
a bunch of
Rubbish.
Yeah. There's just misconceptions, misnomers.
Well,
And we
I
look
would
at
say, yeah, because look at the movies I grew up watching, all these, fairy tale stories. That's what love is.
Right. So we believe love is a fairy tale, that you're gonna go through something hard and then end up in a castle on a hill with a prince and everything's
Magical.
great, right? The other thing that I was taught when I was growing up, just by the culture that I lived in, by my parents, was that when you get married, you become one. You come together and you become one, right?
What did that mean?
So what that means is how I interpreted it was.
Was that explained to you though before you're going to share your interpretation of?
Yeah, I think I'd go to church and I'd talk to my parents and watch their relationship and live in this culture. And I think what it meant to me was our values needed to be the same. We needed to agree on things. We needed to be in alignment with the way that we raised our children. So we needed to compromise, and we needed to come together on everything in order for us to be happy and healthy in our marriage. And this sounds great, doesn't it? Were you guys taught similar things?
Well, I can't help but think of the scripture out of the Bible of cleaving to your wife and leaving your parents behind. I'm obviously a scriptorian because I don't know what it actually says. But that was something I would have in my head like crazy. Not so much Kobe.
Okay, yeah. So you cleave unto your spouse and
none other.
And none other, right? But the way we interpret that is, okay, now we are one entity.
Like we're best friends. We do everything together. Yeah. More like enmeshment, which maybe that doesn't mean anything to people. They don't. Yeah,
but that's that word enmeshment. You can hear it like just, you're
intertwined.
Just intertwined in everything in your lives. And so what I believe and what I believe the scriptures say and God and whatever, I've really shifted since I've started doing therapy and working in my own relationship. I believe that becoming one in purpose is a good thing, that your purpose is toward what God wants you to do. You're becoming one together in that. What I don't believe is that you have to compromise who you are. You have to sacrifice yourself. You have to avoid conflict. You have to comply. You have to make sure the other person's happy all the time.
Leave your friends behind.
Yeah, leave your life behind. Cut off your family, like all of those things, just to keep the peace with the other person.
I did feel this, Brennan. And maybe that was like the anxious inside of me of thinking, I don't want Kobe to go out with friends or go hang out, like have friends that happen to be girls, because I'm terrified that he'll do something or leave me or like them more.
Right. So what happens in a relationship where you believe that you have to agree on everything, you can't have other friends, is you start to just give up your boundaries and who you are. And you think that you got to make things together. And it becomes an enmeshed relationship, or it becomes a codependent relationship where you're not actively choosing into what you're doing together. You're resentfully choosing into what you're doing together, and it kills love. So if you let me rephrase this: if you can't be you in a relationship, then you're going to have a really hard time loving the other person. So I'm not saying be a stubborn jerk face who can't sacrifice or see the other person at all. In fact, what I'm saying is if you can be you, then you can actually see the other person and connect to the other person. So is this making sense to you, Kobe? You're looking at me like, what are you talking about?
No, this is per usual. I am listening and connecting dots, and just remembering. Basically, what you're saying was exactly the opposite of the way I was raised.
Is you're supposed to what?
So let me tell you what that means. So I'm just thinking back to I only know what I observed with my parents.
Right.
I only know.
Right.
And so if I was to tell you, I'll just tell you this. When just before I got married, I was playing junior college football, and I got a call from like a 1AA school, and they said, "Hey, do you want to come and play?" And I'm like, "No, I appreciate the call, but I've got a new game now. I'm getting married." And so
I'm giving up my life so I can get married.
Totally.
There you
And
go.
I didn't know this for how long? Like you didn't tell me for years.
it was just not even a consideration because it's like I'm just like my thought process was only like I can't do that. I have to be married, and I don't know that I could articulate what I was going to do other than what I couldn't do if I was going to be married, as I saw it.
Uh-huh.
And then, so when we got married, I was going to be a teacher. I wanted to be a high school principal. And we got married in the National, and then the first semester within within months, is like, I'm not going to be poor. So you're going to change something else. Totally.
It was so nice.
It was rad. And so I was like, okay, I guess I can't. So I changed my major. I studied public relations and interpersonal communications, which really was a natural skill set for me than teaching was. But I just did not have identity. I gave up my love of playing football, and I just didn't have those things. Like, I don't know that I can't look back and think of anything that I was like, I've got to do this because this is part of who I am.
Yeah.
But and in truth, what we do know is this isn't just like, so if that's an indication of how I was raised, then there's the proof's in the pudding kind of a thing. I just didn't ever have anything. And I look back on it, and my dad loved to golf, and he would go golfing whenever he could. And he would go play basketball in the mornings, I think in the wintertime. But my mom hated that my dad went golfing, or even worse, that he would want to watch golf on like Saturdays or Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
She was so pissed. My mom was I didn't realize this, my mom was super codependent and was a martyr in a very big way. And she had 7 kids, and she kept kids with special needs, but she was resentful to everybody. So because she was so busy and had too much to do, but she wouldn't slow down.
So there's two sides to this coin, and you're kind of illustrating it with talking about your parents. Is if I show up as me in my relationship, then I'm grounded. I know who I am. I'm boundaried. Then I'm much more likely. In fact, it makes it possible for me to really respect and empower my wife to show up as her. I want her to be honest with me. She wants to watch golf all day long. Then tell me that, and let's talk about that, and let's go there instead of just not watching golf at all because she's trying to please me and then she's resenting me. So there's a paradox to this where when you can be you and focus on being you, then you can really love the other person. So in our day-to-day lives, this plays out. So here's an example. Let's say my wife wants to paint the kitchen pink, and I want to paint the kitchen blue. So we come together, and I'm adamant. Like my reality is I want it blue, and she's saying I want it pink. I want it pink. So now we come together, and a couple of things could happen. She could say, "Oh no, blue. That's wonderful. Let's just do it blue," just because she doesn't know who she is. She doesn't want conflict with me, so she goes along with it. And then every time she sees that blue on the wall, she's mad at me. It's not a help. Is that love?
No.
Is that love that she sacrificed to let us paint it blue?
It's not being personally boundaried.
No, she's not boundaried within herself, so she can't truly love me.
But in order to have personal boundaries,
You have to know who you are.
Yeah, you have to have identity.
Right.
That's what
That's
what personal boundaries are. So when people say I struggle with boundaries aren't about let me give you a thing to tell the other person about what they can and can't do. When they say I struggle with boundaries, they're saying I struggle to know who I am.
Okay, I have to just share this really quick because you said that. One of the girls in my group this week shared how she went through this process of figuring out who she was and what she valued. And she's like, and it was so great. And it helped me realize who I really am. And she's describing how great it made her feel. And I said, so do you realize you just created boundaries? And she was like, oh,
yes.
Describing it the opposite way, it totally blew her mind. Like, I just did the hardest thing.
That's what boundaries are.
Yes.
And boundaries are knowing who you are and standing in those truths. So, okay, another thing my wife could do is she could say, you want to paint it blue? Tough.
I'm doing it pink.
Like, it is pink, and I don't care one bit that you want to paint it blue. And then she pulls out the paintbrush and she paints it pink.
That's independence.
Yeah, that is independence.
Like, I'm going to paint this independent of what you want.
Independent of what you want, and I'm not going to care about you at all. That's not love. So, but in some respects, it sounds like what we've been talking about. Hey, be you.
Be strong.
Just be strong and be you. But that's not love. Here's another part of my wife that I know, and this has just been an example, but this one's reality. My wife does care about me, and so her truth is, I want to paint it pink, and I care about you. Like I really genuinely care about you. I don't want to just comply and paint it blue because then we can avoid the conflict, because that's her caring more about her. But if she's saying, you know what, like, I hear you. I want to validate. I want to empathize. I want to understand why you want it blue. And then I'm going to be honest with you about why I want it pink. And let's say we paint it half blue and half pink.
Or how about white?
Yeah. Or we just paint a totally different color. But if we let's say we end up painting it blue, at that point, if she's healthy and she's loving me, then we're painting it blue because she's choosing to paint it blue. She's not being forced. She has understood me. I've influenced her perspective on it, and now she's saying, yes, I'm happy with blue. Let's do this.
So I think a key word, you're saying he influenced, you influenced her, not manipulated.
Absolutely.
Because this can be tricky when you're coming off of, this is what our relationship has been, is I've been manipulated into these things because I didn't know who I was. And if you've been
manipulated over and over and over again without boundaries, then when you start to realize, oh my gosh, I've been manipulated a ton, you're going to dig your heels in, and you're not going to want to be influenced or hear the other person.
And I think that's where I went. So I went from a deep codependency that I carried. I mean, this is why I didn't feel enough only when it came to Kobe. Everywhere else in my life, I was rocking. I was happy. I was proud. But when it came to Kobe, it mattered so much that it affected who I was, his opinion of me.
Yeah.
Okay. So the codependency was strong. And when we started to figure out, like, okay, no, I went totally opposite. And I remember our therapist. Yeah. I remember Amy saying, like, no, the goal is like in between that. It's not to be this strong, I hate you, and I'm a man hater now because you hurt me. It's let's find a middle. And
but to stand in that middle ground takes strength. So the independency is a way to disconnect and protect. The codependency is a way to overconnect and try to control and feel safe in that. And that codependency actually creates unsafety in a relationship. So if you're interdependent, you're in the middle, you know who you are, you can stand on your own 2 feet. Therefore, you can then see the other person, you can see their pain, you're not taking it personally because you know who you are.
Mhm.
And that's when it's the old, saying that we hear all the time. You can't truly love somebody unless you love yourself. And your ability to love them is directly correlated to how much you know yourself and love yourself. So that is the key to actually loving somebody. So the paradox is this: is you don't go to your spouse to get your strength. You go to your spouse to offer it. So you go somewhere else to get your strength, and you go to God. Within yourself, you find that strength. And once you have that, then if the other person's spinning out of control or crazy or doing whatever, you can still see them through the eyes of love because you'll be boundaried.
Mhm.
You'll know who you are, and you'll know that you have a secure place to land, and then you can truly love the person.
Okay, so for this right here, you hear that all the time as far as you got to love yourself before you can love others. And that really didn't speak to me until it did, until it hit my head like, this is your problem, Ashlyn. This, you cannot feel enough. You cannot feel any of these things until you decide,
Right.
right? It couldn't be Kobe who said, hey, just so you're aware, you are enough. He would tell me that once he started to get into a healthier place, but I'm like, it didn't do anything for me.
It doesn't. You
had
have to find it within.
Yes.
Yes.
And I'll say this, I use this little visual for a couple different parts of relationship and healing that, but I had to visually look at, I have these walls up. Okay. So I went from codependency to very independent, and I have these walls of like, I am protected, and these are my boundaries. These are my healthy boundaries, right? And they just created a lot of independence. Right. And so Amy would tell me, hey, you have this door. You might have these walls, but you have a door, and the door opens and closes. Mm-hmm. So at least pop your head through.
Yeah.
Test the waters. Try to look. Try to be in there and try to find some connection. And you can shut it, but eventually that wall has to come down brick by brick. But it's hard to just knock it down, right? And so for me, that door was like, okay, here's a couple more bricks I'm going to take off. I'm going to put forth some effort. I'm going to show up for Kobe.
But here's the thing, Ashlyn, in this analogy, I guess what would be healthy is to replace that wall with a fence that you can see through. So you still know who you are. You still have your borders and your boundaries, but you can see him on the other side.
Right.
You still, and you can see where he's at and how he's doing, but you're still protected. And then you'll have a gate that you can let him in when you want. You can close it when you want.
Yeah.
Not just a wall where you just, I'm not going to see you at all.
Yeah.
And if you have no fence, then it's just
back to codependency.
Yeah, then it's like, I don't know who I am, and I'm just getting consumed and taken advantage of by this other person. So
super interesting because, excuse me, I think the big, I can just think back to years and years and years of this paradox that I was in of resenting and being frustrated and being mad and angry. And I think the anger would come over time of having resentments. But yet at the same time, I didn't know who I was, therefore I didn't know what I wanted.
If you have resentment, then you lack boundaries.
No question. And it's just obvious that was the case. So what's interesting is this is one of those things where it's really crazy to understand. Like, it's hard for me to say this out loud just because of what it sounds like. I know for all of you who are listening right now, but I'm very, I am, of all things, I am super, super thankful for my road of change, because I had to let go of addiction and all the baggage, all the stuff that went with it, so that I could actually begin at 37 years old, begin to understand who I was. And I am realizing with time that knowing who I am is like layers and layers of the onion still. There's still parts of me that I don't know, I don't understand. And but the cool part is recovery is a gift that's helped me to learn about who I am, understand my identity,
Right.
embrace it, and also be okay with what it is. And that's a gift of recovery. So am I grateful for addiction? I'm grateful for it. I'm thankful for the road that I've been on and the change that has taken place in my life, because now I know more about who I am now
Absolutely.
than I ever have. And I still got a ways to go.
Well, you're still figuring out who you are, what you like. It's fun to see this in our kids. Our kids are starting. Lucy this week said she normally likes everything, all foods. She'll just eat whatever, like put it in front of her. And she started not liking things. And I'm like, wait, what's going on? Why do you not like something? And she said, I've decided that to help my anxiety, I'm going to start making choices of what I actually do like and what I don't like.
Oh, okay.
And it's totally cute to see
Yeah.
her, like she's figuring out who she is.
Yeah.
And
Love it.
it is cute because it took us in our 30s to start doing that. And so 2 years ago, I wanted Kobe to start skiing with me. So I grew up skiing. So I'm like,
Okay.
Kobe, let's go skiing. So we take the girls, and this was our day date every Thursday. So this year comes around, hey, Kobe, are we going to go get ski passes again? And he says, no, I actually don't like to ski.
No.
And I was
honesty. What do you know?
I know,
What do you know?
but I was super sad. Like, well, this was our thing that we did every Thursday. But I thought, you know what? It's okay. And so yesterday I told him, like, hey, I'm going skiing today. I totally miss you when I'm up there, but
That's
it's
awesome.
okay.
That's so good.
Yeah.
You can be comfortable with the other person being uncomfortable. So
And that would have never been okay with me. The discomfort of knowing that you wanted me to be there and I wasn't I would have shamed myself into going.
well, I think you did for that whole
Totally.
season. You're like, I hate this, but
Totally.
I'll go.
And Ashlyn gets just as excited about skiing as she does about roller skating.
They're nostalgic things. That's why.
Yeah. But the truth is like that is very, very that was challenging for me until finally just like, no, like
Yeah.
I'm just not going to do that. And I'm gonna be okay with you wanting me there and me not being there. Like I'm okay with that.
yeah.
And I just think like yesterday, like this is another part of being in the middle where you can accept the relationship and where you are, right? Yesterday, Ashlyn came home from skiing actually with the girls, and I had a really long day, kind of a long week, and I just laid on the couch and just like watched the Great British Bake Off with Tiku on my lap,
Okay.
and just was like decompressing, right? Just doing a little self-care. I really enjoy that. And Ashley came home and I hadn't made any dinner. And she's like, what the heck? I just do not like it all that you did do this. And I'm like, okay, I'm okay with that. Like, I'm okay with the fact that you don't like the fact that I didn't make dinner. Like, I'm totally good with that.
And then we took care of things, and it was like the easiest argument ever.
Well, and really, you can connect to her in that emotion and be okay with it. So you can empathize.
Yeah.
You can understand why she. Yeah.
He's like, you're tired, and
And
You've been
you
skiing?
can feel loved even though you're a little bit bothered that he didn't make dinner.
For
yeah,
sure.
right?
I just showed up mad, so
Yeah.
I did really good.
Yeah. But I think the key part for me.
Where's
is,
my
like,
dinner?
I know,
I was
right?
angry.
She was angry, but
And you're watching a baking show.
Yeah, totally,
so,
right?
yeah.
I'm becoming to like add insult to injury, right? But the key piece for me, okay, on this to go from codependent, where I give, power to Ashlyn to determine how I feel and what I do, from going from codependency to being interdependent, like I'm inside of me, I'm independent of where Ashlyn is, but I'm interdependent, is that I was okay with it and I didn't let that shame overwhelm me. I was okay sitting in discomfort. And I think for so many years, my codependency didn't allow me to sit in discomfort.
You cared what I thought.
Stop consuming your spouse and start loving them. And, we often talk about codependency being that the wife is codependent to the sex addict husband, and that's not the case. In fact, I'd say a symptom of sex addiction is codependency.
Totally.
Because a sex addict is consuming women for their validation and for their worth, and so they consume women sexually, but they also consume their spouses emotionally, spiritually, and otherwise for their self-worth.
That was exactly what you just described.
Yeah. So the sex addicts are just as much or more codependent than the spouses.
Yeah.
It's not a one or the other, right? You guys grab your barf bags, because this makes me barf. Okay.
Okay.
We have white ice.
This
here
is
waiting.
right. This is right before Valentine's Day.
Okay.
You complete me.
Oh, yeah.
You complete me. What that is. You know what? Go complete your freaking self first, and then go love your spouse. Go actually love them.
That is super funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, that whole thing of, oh my gosh, it's kind of a bitter pill, this whole discussion topic for me, because I know how many years I wasted not knowing who I was, and it also is like bitter to me too, because I mean, I'm 41, I'm going to be 42 in May, and my mom was 56 when she died, and she never got to the point where she could learn this principle to define herself by what she liked and to be interdependent rather than codependent. And those are just one of those things that just like, this is a bitter pill, but I guess, that's just how it is. But good news is
well, here's another point from that, which is if you've been codependent and you've used the other person to feel okay, and you've avoided conflict, or you haven't been boundaried, it is to shift into interdependency is going to be uncomfortable, and it's going to take courage to sit in, oh my gosh, they don't like what I just said, but I'm being honest, and to just be okay with that. To be boundaried is a process of practicing courage consistently, so that you then realize, oh my gosh, I can be me and I can still be loved. And if you have these faulty core beliefs underneath your codependency, things like nobody will love me as I am, I'm not enough, I get my worth from others, things like that, then you're gonna have to face those things directly, and not just know that they're there, but practice stepping against them in order to shift out of this codependency. And it's not easy. It's hard, and it's easier to stay in what you're comfortable with, even though what you're comfortable with might be just creating tons of resentment and feelings of disconnection in your marriage. So step into the discomfort to get out of the suffering, and you can shift into interdependency.
This is one of those things that mirrors recovery exactly. It was more painful, it was more exhausting, it was more challenging and draining to be in addiction than it was to work recovery.
When you got to your rock bottom with your codependency, that's when you started to have the courage to be interdependent.
Yes. And it's the same thing. It's like, it's so much more challenging and draining and exhausting and taxing to be codependent than it is to endure the discomfort, the short-term discomfort of interdependence.
A lot of people would disagree with you, and they'd say, I want to just stay stuck in my codependency.
Because that's what's comfortable. Like, they hate it, but it's known and it's comfortable.
Yep.
And it's hard to be able to be stretched from the insides.
So
But I promise, I'm still working on this myself. I really, really am. But every night when I check in, I always define if I felt the pull of codependency with Ashlyn and with the girls, and if I gave into codependency with Ashlyn and with the girls. And that's helped in a huge way to be able to sit in the discomfort of interdependence. And I'm more that way than I've ever
been, for sure.
At least in those two roles, right? So
Okay, so I have to ask one more question,
okay,
because I'm sure there's people asking. Okay, so we answered the question of how to master connection by saying, okay, find your interdependence, figure out who you are. But what does that even look like? I get this question a lot, like, well, how did you do this? And for me, it's not one thing. It was lots of things.
Right. And that's a huge question. So it's your self-care. What resonates with you? Who are you? What do you really value? What do you feel peace about? Start to check those things out. What's that feeling that you get maybe in your throat or your gut that's just like, "Oh, I'm doing this thing and I hate it." And when you notice that, notice what boundary you're giving up. So practice self-care consistently. The second thing is, I'm a big believer in God, and that's where I think you find it. And if you don't take the space to just stop and let God come in and validate you and see you and nurture you and show you who you are, you're going to have a hard time figuring out who you are. And you're going to make your spouse your God, or your work your God, or something else that you're trying to get that validation from. So just stop for a minute and listen and see God all around you, telling you who you are and validating you and showing you who you are. So as you do your self-care, as you resonate with God, as you meditate, as you pray, and then the third thing I would say is to actually test it out and try some courage. So when you do something a little bit out there or scary, if you feel that there's this feeling or sense of empowerment, it's just like, oh, like I did it. That feels good. I like that. Then take note of that and do it again. And watch yourself step into who you actually are, and you'll start to gain confidence as you do it consistently, and it won't be as scary the more you do it. So
Awesome.
did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. It's a rising strong moment for me is what I think of when you say those things of deciding I want something more for me.
So
in
go
this
be
life.
vulnerable
Yeah.
and see who you actually are.
Yeah. And it's okay. It doesn't matter how old you are. You can still figure out who you are.
Absolutely.
Well, this has spurred a lot of thoughts, probably a lot of questions, additional questions in my head that I'm going to be stewing on. So I'm sure that many of you have got questions on like how to do this. What does this look like? What about my situation? Here's what's cool is today we're going to have a Q&A on our premium site, and the people who are there with us have like special access to a monthly Q&A where they submit questions and we answer them. Specifically, we get to interact and so forth.
Like they want specific answers to their story.
Yeah.
Because all our stories are so different.
Totally. All of the stories are different. So we're not just going to answer questions on, I'm sure there's going to be some related to codependency, but all kinds of recovery and all kinds of situations. And if you're not there, we want to invite you to come over because we want a chance to interact with you. We appreciate you guys listening. It's super valuable for us. We love it. And, but also know that not every question, I'm sure the questions that are thought of oftentimes go unanswered, but just know that you have an ability to access us. And
Well, and the premium site, premium sounds expensive, but it is anything but expensive. It's so cheap.
Totally.
And so you get more access to answers and connection. And yeah, it's awesome.
It'll be great. So guys, thanks for being here. Appreciate what you've heard. If you like anything that you've heard today, then go ahead and share us, and love to have you rate and review us over on iTunes.